Good evening, everybody. Hey, if you guys don't mind, we're going to flip-flop the order tonight, and I'm going to try to do the teaching first. Hey, Patrick, I'm getting that same echo that we had last week. Thank you. I have a little one with a band concert tonight, so I'd like to see a portion of it at least. So we're going to go through this first, and then I'll head out, and then you guys can do praise and prayer with Val. I've never looked forward to an evening more because we're finishing Judges tonight. So Everett stepped into my office today and I said something about, man, Judges is messed up. And he said, hang on, you're almost there. That's certainly true tonight as we close out this book. I feel like 6 weeks was about right. That was about the right amount of time. It has been a very interesting literary and historical book, but very strange and dark. If we go all the way back, the first couple of chapters gave us a double introduction, which is interesting because tonight that'll be bookended by a double conclusion. That double introduction kind of gave us an understanding of the military problem. They didn't drive out the people like they were supposed to in the Promised Land. And then the second part of that double introduction gives us the result. Really, it was a religious problem. As a result of not driving those people out, there was an issue with them intermarrying, beginning to worship other gods. And throughout the book of Judges, we've seen that kind of creep in. And we've seen this cycle that continues to happen, but it's been a downward spiral. Israel does what's evil in the sight of the Lord. The Lord allows them to be oppressed by one of those countries or a neighboring nation. Israel cries out to the Lord, and the Lord raises up a deliverer. The oppression is subdued because of that deliverer that we call a judge, and then Israel lives at peace. We've seen that loop 12 times, basically. The minor judges didn't really give us that much detail, but the major judges all used this language even. But last week we saw something interesting. The cycle started to decay. Do you remember in the story of Samson, there was one that was kind of skipped there. It was number 3. Israel cries out to the Lord. We don't even see them doing that. But even though they didn't do that, the Lord raised up Samson. We think the Spirit of the Lord was with him. It's not really the same kind of language as before with the judges. The oppression is subdued. He pushes back the Philistines. Not completely, though. It's not completely taken care of until on into 1 Samuel. And then Israel, did they really ever live at peace after that? We never get that same line that Israel lived at peace. So you see this starting to decay, even to the point now, as we look tonight, Israel does what's evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord allows them to be oppressed. We don't read of any more crying out to the Lord. Well, maybe a little, you could argue. And we don't read of another deliverer being raised up. We've got 5 chapters to cover tonight, and no one's called a judge or a deliverer. It's almost like this cycle that I have been calling a downward spiral has finally hit rock bottom to the point where it's not really even a cycle anymore. They're just in the pit. Israel does what's evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord's allowing them to be oppressed as a result. Any thoughts or questions on that as we've watched through these 16 chapters so far? Hard to watch, right? Certainly shows their need for leadership, shows their need for a king, which ultimately will not be satisfied in Saul or even David. Ultimately, what we're looking forward to is the king that is Jesus Christ. So this decaying cycle hits rock bottom tonight, and I'm going to warn you one more time. I did a couple weeks ago. I'm going to rate tonight's study MA. All reader discretion is advised. We've got some bad violence and some bad sexual situations tonight as well. So it is a rough study. We're finishing this book, like I said, with a double conclusion. Much like we had this twofold introduction, we have a twofold conclusion. It's parallel to the military introduction and the religious introduction, we've got the opposite. We're going to have two stories. They're just stories. They're not stories about judges. They're stories about what was happening in these days. The first one is about the decay of religion, of their religious practices. And then the last one is about the decay of their military. Instead of fighting against other lands, they're going to end up fighting against each other. And so a lot of this is going to be for the shock value. I thought about, it might be fun to, okay, let's count together how many of God's laws they're breaking. But you just can't keep up. You can't keep track. It's just boom, 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 and then they try to cover it up with other breaking of God's laws, and they've just fallen so far. And so there is a lot of shock value in this. What used to be forbidden in any other reading of the Old Testament, it would have been like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. This is just common practice. This is just what's happening in and among God's people now. So it's almost like that evil, idolatrous stuff that God didn't want them to be a part of. Drive out these nations because I don't want this to get a root in you, as now taking a root in them. And you see it start to blossom. All right, so with that, let's finish this great old book. Judges chapter 17. There was a man of the hill country of Ephraim whose name was Micah. And he said to his mother, the 1,100 pieces of silver that were taken from you, about which you uttered a curse, and also spoke it in my ears, behold, the silver is with me. I took it. Well, there's law number 1 broken, right? Thou shalt not steal. And his mother said, blessed be my son by the Lord. And he restored the 1,100 pieces of silver to his mother. And his mother said, I dedicate the silver to the Lord from my hand for my son, to make a carved image and a metal image. Now, therefore, I will restore it to you. So when he restored the money to his mother took 200 pieces of silver and gave it to the silversmith, who made it into a carved image and a metal image. It was in the house of Micah, and the man Micah had a shrine, and he made an ephod and household gods, and ordained one of his sons, who became his priest. In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. So the first part of this double conclusion, we meet this man named Micah. Micah, we're told, lived in the hill country of Ephraim, which actually is where both stories at least start tonight. So I don't know what that means, if that's just because it's kind of centrally located, or if I didn't find anybody that gave any meaning to that. But Micah lives there with his mother still. He stole some silver from his mom. Mom said, I curse whoever did this, and he comes clean. And she says, oh, bless you, son, for telling the truth. Gives it to him, and he makes an idol out of it. Verse 7, and then made one of his sons a priest. You caught that, right? So pretty messed up already at Micah's house. He didn't do any of that, no. He decided to make his own god. I mean, we could chew on this if you wanted to for a while. Why does a guy do this when he knows better? Is it because he can control it? Is it just, I don't know. Now there was a young man of Bethlehem in Judah, the family of Judah, who was a Levite, and he sojourned there. And the man departed from the town of Bethlehem in Judah to sojourn where he could find a place. As he journeyed, he came to the hill country of Ephraim, to the house of Micah. And Micah said to him, where do you come from? And he said to him, I am a Levite of Bethlehem in Judah, and I'm going to sojourn where I may find a place. And Micah said to him, well, stay with me, and be to me a father and a priest. And I will give you 10 pieces of silver a year, and a suit of clothes and your living. And the Levite went in, and the Levite was content to dwell with the man, and the young man became to him like one of his sons. And Micah ordained the Levite, and the young man became his priest, and was in the house of Micah. Then Micah said, now I know that the Lord will prosper me, because I have a Levite as priest. Again, how many laws, how messed up is this? He fired his son as priest, I guess. but a true bona fide Levite comes by, probably running from his call. Levites would have been distributed among the people, and his assignment would have been in Judah, and he didn't like that anymore. So he went on walkabout and trying to decide, where else could I serve? Where else could I be? And so Micah employs him directly as a personal personal priests to Micah's family. So I don't know how long this lasted. This could have been months, could have been years. But then we turn the page to Judges 18, as if this wasn't bad enough. So already a terrible situation. Judges 18, in those days there was no king in Israel, and in those days the tribe of the people of Dan was seeking for itself an inheritance to dwell in, for until then no inheritance among the tribes had fallen to them. So the people of Dan sent 5 able men from the whole number of their tribe, from Zorah and from Ashtaol, to spy out the land and explore it. And they said to them, go and explore the land. And they came to the hill country of Ephraim, to the house of Micah, and lodged there. When they were by the house of Micah, they recognized the voice of the young Levite. And they turned aside and said to him, who brought you here? What are you doing in this place? What is your business here? And he said to them, this is how Micah has dealt with me. He has hired me, and I have become his priest. And they said to him, inquire of God, please, that we may know whether the journey on which we are setting out will succeed. And the priest said to them, go in peace. The journey on which you go is under the eye of the Lord. All right, a lot of issues here. First of all, had Dan received a tribal allotment? Yes, they had. What was the problem? You remember on the first pages of Judges, it would have been in Judges chapter 1 and 2, we read of all these tribes not completely driving out the people, and then we get to Dan, and Dan hadn't even taken care of any of the business that they were supposed to. So it's not that Dan hadn't received a tribal allotment, it's that the tribe of Dan hadn't done any of what they were supposed to. So they were going out to find another place to live. And so this is why later on in the Old Testament, if you look at a later Old Testament map, Dan has moved. The tribe of Dan ends up moving to the northernmost spot in Israel from where they were down by the Philistines. I'm sick of these Philistines. We can't overcome anything. We're just always facing persecution. So let's just move. And so they're on their way to Micah. It says they recognize the voice of this Levite. I don't think that means that they knew him personally. I think it was probably like an accent of some sort that, hey, wait, you're not from Ephraim. Tell us your story. What's going on here? And so he shares how Micah has employed him as his own personal Levite, which, in case you were wondering, is not a thing. It was supposed to be, and that's part of what a lot of scholars have pointed out. This is the making of a personal religion instead of a communal one. This is one where Micah wants to set the rules. Micah wants to do what he wants to do. So Dan is sending out some spies, just like Israel did, Moses did, and trying to find a good spot to land. Verse 7, then the 5 men departed and came to Laish, and saw the people who were there, how they lived in security after the manner of the Sidonians, quiet and unsuspecting, lacking nothing that is in the earth, and possessing wealth, and how they were far from the Sidonians, and had no dealings with anyone. And when they came to their brothers at Zorah and Eshtaol, their brothers said to them, well, what do you report? They said, arise and let's go up against them, for we have seen the land, and behold, it is very good. And will you do nothing? Do not be slow to go to enter in and possess the land. As soon as you go, you will come to an unsuspecting people. The land is spacious, for God has given it into your hands, a place where there is no lack of anything that is in the earth. In Judah. On this account, that place is called Mahani Dan to this day. Behold, it is west of Kiriath Jearim. And they passed on from there to the hill country of Ephraim and came back to the house of Micah. And so they're starting their journey. They've scouted out. They found. Did this language remind you guys of anything? What did it sound like? Sounded like the initial spies, right? It's almost like they're trying to recreate, even in the language that they're using. Oh, the Lord has given us that. Did the Lord give them this? No, the Lord gave them the land that they had. It's almost the whole thing just strikes me as them continuing just to be fake and try to do what God had done in the first place. They pull up to Micah's house, verse 14, and the 5 men who had gone to scout out the country of Laish said to his brothers, Do you know that in these houses there is an ephod, household gods, a carved image, and a metal image? Now therefore consider what you will do. And they turned aside there and came to the house of the young Levite at the home of Micah, and asked him about his welfare. Now the 600 men of the Danites, armed with their weapons of war, stood by the entrance of the gate. And the 5 men who had gone to scout out the land went up and entered and took the carved image, the ephod, the household gods, and the metal image, while the priests stood by the entrance of the gate with the 600 men armed with weapons of war. And when these went into Micah's house and took the carved image, the ephod, the household gods, and the metal image, the priest said to them, "What are you doing?" And they said to him, "Keep quiet. Put your hand on your mouth and come with us and be to us a father and a priest. Is it better for you to be a priest to the house of one man, or the priest of a tribe and a clan in Israel?" And the priest's heart was glad. He took the ephod and the household gods and the carved image and went along with the people. So they turned and departed, putting the little ones and the livestock and the goods in front of them. Why did they do that? Anybody want to guess? What's that? Quite the opposite. They're expecting attack from where? The rear. They're like, okay, Micah is going to come after us. We've just stolen all of this, and so put all of the vulnerable stuff up front, and we'll try, this is where we expect attack from. When they had gone a distance from the home of Micah, the men who were in the houses near Micah's house were called out, and they overtook the people of Dan, and they shouted to the people of Dan, who turned around and said to Micah, "What's the matter with you, that you come with such a company?" And he said, "You take my gods that I made and the priest, and you go away, and what have I left? How then do you ask me, what is the matter with you?" And the people of Dan said to him, "Don't let your voice be heard among us, lest angry fellows fall upon you, and you lose your life with the lives of your household." Then the people of Dan went their way. And when Micah saw that they were too strong for him, he turned and he went back to his home. I mean, the only word for this at this point is lawlessness, right? You've got a guy who makes his own image and is now mad that his fellow countrymen stole them and these idols that he had and his priest. And that line is interesting, and I wonder if I don't know, some of this feels like a lesson even for today, doesn't it? I wonder if there are those in our society who would say the same thing Micah did. You take my gods that I made and my priest, and you go away. What have I left? You take all the things that I find comfort in. You take all the things that I've manufactured to put all of my faith in. You take them away. What do I have left? There was an emptiness there for Micah that is really sad, and a great illustration of what idolatry does. It kind of eats away at us. So verse 27, the people of Dan took what Micah had made and the priests who belonged to him, and they came to Laish, a people quiet and unsuspecting. And they struck them with the edge of the sword and burned the city with fire. And there was no deliverer, because it was far from Sidon. And they had no dealings with anyone. It was in the valley that belongs to Beth Rehob. Then they rebuilt the city and lived in it, and they named the city Dan, after the name of Dan their ancestor, who was born to Israel. But the name of the city was Laish at first. And the people of Dan set up the carved image for themselves. And Jonathan, son of Gershom, son of Moses, and his sons were priests to the tribe of Danites until the day of captivity of the land. So they set up Micah's carved image that he made, as long as the house of God was at Shiloh. So that's the end of that story. What you see is a complete collapse of Israel's religious habits. No longer was there just one God before them. Micah creates this image, this idol. The Danites, on their way to a different tribal allotment because they didn't like the one God gave them, steal it, take it, and then they worship it for generations to come as a result. Thoughts? Not a lot of good ones, right? I mean, this is moral decay at its best. Its worst. Yeah, he was very possessive of it. This was my God. And which is probably why he did it in the first place. A God that we can control. Lots of this rings true still, for sure. Pretty expensive God, yes, absolutely.
How do you think this parallels Israel today?
Oh, I don't know about that. I was just thinking in our own context. I think this is just, this parallels just the human heart when we turn from our Creator, when we turn from our Maker. It's just a downward spiral.
Yeah,
That's an interesting question. I don't.
Jews have done that today.
Yeah.
They don't think they have, but
They don't think they have. They've turned from God's king that they wanted. All right, let's go to a worse story. How about that? That'll be fun. Judges 19. So double conclusion. That was the first conclusion that kind of is like the second conclusion. So if we're doing a chiastic structure here in Judges, that was B and B prime. Now we're going to look at the military failure as well that counteracts that first introduction. Judges 19. In those days, when there was no king in Israel, a certain Levite was sojourning in the remote parts of the hill country of Ephraim, who took himself a concubine from Bethlehem in Judah. Pause there real quick for a couple notes. First of all, nobody really believes this happens to be that same Levite, but it is interesting. Maybe that's just what Levites did when they went wandering. They went to the hill country of Ephraim. And then this one in particular takes a concubine from Bethlehem in Judah. So what you're going to see, it's almost kind of a pseudo-marriage here. She was a concubine, apparently, and he is going to take her because we're going to refer to his father-in-law, but there wasn't, a lot of scholars are confused about what this relationship really is, so we're going to treat it as his wife. You don't see the word marriage, but you see father-in-law, and later on you see it, yeah. Anyway, verse 2, and his concubine was unfaithful to him. Okay. And she went away from him to her father's house at Bethlehem in Judah, and was there some 4 months. Then her husband, so see, we've got a reference there. Her husband arose and went after her to speak kindly to her and bring her back. He had with him his servant and a couple of donkeys, and she brought him into her father's house. And when the girl's father saw him, he came with joy to meet him. And his father-in-law, the girl's father, made him stay, and he remained with him 3 days. So they ate and drank and spent the night there. And on the 4th day they arose early in the morning, and he prepared to go. But the girl's father said to his son-in-law, "Strengthen your heart with a morsel of bread, and after that you may go." So the two of them sat and ate and drank together. And the girl's father said to the man, "Be pleased to spend the night, and let your heart be merry." And when the man rose up to go, his father-in-law pressed him till he spent the night there again. And on the 5th day he arose early in the morning to depart. And the girl's father said, "Strengthen your heart and wait until the day declines." So they ate, both of them. And when the man and his concubine and his servant rose up to depart, his father-in-law, the girl's father, said to him, "Behold, now the day has waned towards evening. Please spend the night. Behold, the day draws to its close. Lodge here and let your heart be merry. And tomorrow you shall arise early in the morning for your journey and go home." So just to catch you up, we've got a Levite that was wandering the hills of Ephraim again and took for himself a concubine from Bethlehem. She was unfaithful to him and left him, went home to Bethlehem down in Judah and stayed with her father there, but he wanted her back. Let's celebrate just a little bit of a wholesome type thing. He really longed for his bride, and he went to get her and speak kindly to her and try to win her back. Okay, wholesome thoughts over. And so now we're there. His father-in-law wants him to stay, and he just keeps pressing him for some reason. Verse 10, but the man would not spend the night. He rose up and departed and arrived opposite Jebus, that is Jerusalem. He had with him a couple of saddled donkeys, and his concubine was with him. They were near Jebus. The day was nearly over, and the servant said to his master, "Come now, let us turn aside to this city of the Jebusites and spend the night in it." And his master said to him, "We will not turn aside to the city of foreigners who do not belong to the people of Israel, but we will pass on to Gibeah." And he said to his young man, "Come, let us draw near to one of these places and spend the night at Gibeah or Ramah." So they passed on and went their way. And the sun went down on them near Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin. And they turned aside there to go in and spend the night at Gibeah. And he went in and sat down in the open square of the city, for no one took them into his house to spend the night. So catching up the story, he and his concubine bride are now heading back home, passing through Benjamin. Refuses to say. His servants said, hey, let's stay among the Jebusites. He goes, no, we will not stay among foreigners. We will stay among our people, the people of God. Let's go to Gibeah instead. Nobody takes them in. We pick up the story in verse 16. Behold, an old man was coming from his work in the field at evening. The man was from the hill country of Ephraim, and he was sojourning in Gibeah. The men of the place were Benjamites, and he lifted up his eyes, and he saw the traveler in the open square of the city. And the old man said, where are you going, and where do you come from? And he said to him, we are passing from Bethlehem in Judah to the remote parts of the hill country of Ephraim, from which I come. I went to Bethlehem in Judah, and I'm going to the house of the Lord, but no one has taken me into his house. We have straw and feed for our donkeys, with bread and wine for me and your female servant and young man with your servants. There's no lack of anything. And the old man said, peace be to you. I will care for all your wants. Only do not spend the night in the square. So he brought him into his house and gave the donkeys feed. And they washed their feet and ate and drank. So this old man shows them a kindness from the same area, just happens to be living in Gibeah, shows them a kindness, says, hey, it's not safe to stay in the city square. Why don't you come back to my spot? And that's where it takes an ugly turn. Verse 22. As they were making their hearts merry, behold, the men of the city, worthless fellows, surrounded the house, beating on the door. And they said to the old man, the master of the house, bring out the man who came into your house, that we may know him. And that's sexually, in case you didn't catch that in your translation. And the man, the master of the house, went out to them and said to them, no, my brothers, do not act so wickedly. Since this man has come into my house, do not do this vile thing. Behold, here are my virgin daughter and his concubine. Let me bring them out now. Violate them and do with them what seems good to you. But against this man, do not do this outrageous thing. But the men would not listen to him. So the man seized his concubine and made her go out to them. And they knew her and abused her all night until the morning. And as the dawn began to break, they let her go. And as morning appeared, the woman came and fell down at the door of the man's house where her master was until it was light. Her master rose up in the morning, and when he opened the doors of the house and went out to go on his way, behold, there was his concubine lying at the door of the house with her hands on the threshold. He said to her, get up, let's be going. But there was no answer. Then he put her on the donkey, and the man rose up, and he went away to his home. When he entered his house, he took a knife, and taking a hold of his concubine, he divided her, limb by limb, into 12 pieces, and sent her throughout all the territory of Israel. And all who saw it said, such a thing has never happened or been seen from the day that the people of Israel came up out of the land of Egypt until this day. Consider it, take counsel, and speak. I told you it was an ugly scene. That might be the worst thing in Scripture. I mean, just a terrible, terrible act. The men wanted to have a homosexual gang rape, and they said, no, instead, why don't you just take her, do with her what you want? So this man who wanted to speak kindly to his wife and bring her back has now saved himself with her and just tossed her to the dogs and said, do with her as you wish. And they ravaged her to the point where we're not sure if she died that night somewhere on the donkey at some point. It's just an awful scene. And he decides to make an example of this. Cuts her up and sends her to all 12 tribes. I would love to tell you that most scholars believe this is an allegory of God's pain that he feels through Israel's cheating and idolatry. I'd love to say that because that'd make me feel better. But it doesn't appear to be because of the following two chapters. That story is so awful, it makes you think it's some sort of allegory. Like, which minor prophet was told to marry a prostitute? Was that Haggai? Haggai was told to go marry that prostitute, and it was basically his life became kind of an allegory for the jealousy that God had. And I wish that was it, but now as a result of this event, civil war is going to break out. Well, okay, so then you've got definitely echoes of Sodom and Gomorrah here, for sure. But what's the difference? The difference would be they were visiting a foreign land. This is Israel. And so, Val, since you brought it up, I don't think that's accidental. I think this story highlights that descent, that what used to be found, just awful, that outside of God's people, that to the point where that became kind of the pinnacle of evil, even in Jesus' day, Sodom and Gomorrah, that now you see the same thing happening within Israel. If you remember, that's why the man didn't want to stay with the Jebusites. He said, no, we won't stay among foreigners. We will stay among the people of God. So yeah, that's not accidental. That should call up your memory. Judges chapter 20 then. Then all of the people of Israel came out from Dan to Beersheba. So now when we see that, what does Dan to Beersheba mean? Beersheba is all the way to the south. Where's Dan now? All the way to the north. So that's the whole of Israel. When you see that throughout the Old Testament, from Dan to Beersheba, that meant the whole of Israel, including the land of Gilead, and the congregation assembled as one man to the Lord at Mizpah. And the chiefs of all the people, of all the tribes of Israel, presented themselves in the assembly of the people of God, 400,000 men on foot that drew the sword. Now the people of Benjamin heard that the people of Israel had gone up to Mizpah. And the people of Israel said, tell us, how did this evil happen? And the Levite, the husband of the woman who was murdered, answered and said, I came to Gibeah that belongs to Benjamin, I and my concubine, to spend the night. And the leaders of Gibeah rose against me and surrounded the house against me by night. They meant to kill me, and they violated my concubine, and she is dead. Notice which part he left out. I tossed her out. So I took hold of my concubine and cut her in pieces and sent her throughout all the country of the inheritance of Israel, for they have committed an abomination and outrage in Israel. Behold, you people of Israel, all of you, give your advice and counsel here. There is a bit of irony here that if you remember the stories of the judges that we've read, they always try to get all of Israel to come, and nobody ever succeeded, right? They get a couple people from Zebulun and now Naphtali, and maybe they get Asher to come down. But now you have this unnamed Levite that makes this drastic appeal for justice, and everybody comes. Every other tribe comes. And so what you're going to see now is all the rest of the tribes of Israel come against Benjamin and say, why has this evil happened? We've got to get rid of this. Verse 8, and all the people arose as one man, saying, none of us will go to his tent, and none of us will return to his house. But now this is what we will do to Gibeah. We will go up against it by lot, and we will take 10 men of 100 throughout all the tribes of Israel, and 100 of 1,000, and 1,000 of 10,000, to bring provisions for the people. And when they come, they may repay Gibeah of Benjamin for all the outrage that they have committed in Israel. So all the men of Israel gathered against the city, united as one man. Huge, huge army. Verse 12, and the tribes of Israel sent men through all the tribe of Benjamin, saying, what evil is this that has taken place among you? Now therefore give up the men, the worthless fellows in Gibeah, that we may put them to death and purge evil from Israel. But the Benjaminites would not listen to the voice of their brothers, the people of Israel. Then the people of Benjamin came together out of the cities to Gibeah to go out to battle against the people of Israel. And the people of Benjamin mustered out of their cities on that day 26,000 men who drew the sword, besides the inhabitants of Gibeah who mustered 700 chosen men. Among all these were 700 chosen men who were left-handed. Every one could sling a stone at a hair and not miss. And the men of Israel, apart from Benjamin, mustered 400,000 men who drew the sword. All these were men of war. So we're just getting a picture of how strong both sides were. You had incredible numbers with the 11 tribes, the Israelites, let's call them. And the Benjaminites didn't have as many, but they had marksmen. They had people, if you remember earlier when we talked about Ehud and the skill with his left hand, that didn't always mean left-handed because they had another word for that. It's probably closer to the word we'd call ambidextrous. They were incredible fighters. They could use both hands with these weapons. The people of Israel arose and went up to Bethel and inquired of God, "Who shall go up first for us to fight against the people of Benjamin?" And the Lord said, "Judah shall go up first." And the people of Israel rose in the morning and encamped against Gibeah. And the men of Israel went out to fight against Benjamin. And the men of Israel drew up the battle line against them at Gibeah. The people of Benjamin came out of Gibeah and destroyed on that day 22,000 men of the Israelites. But the men of Israel, took courage and again formed the battle line in the same place where they had formed it on the first day. And the people of Israel went up and wept before the Lord until the evening. And they inquired of the Lord, "Shall we again draw near to the fight against our brothers, the people of Benjamin?" And the Lord said, "Go up against them." So the people of Israel came near against the people of Benjamin the second day. And Benjamin went against them out of Gibeah the second day and destroyed 18,000 men of the people of Israel. All these were men who drew the sword. Then all the people of Israel, the whole army, went up and came to Bethel and wept. They sat there before the Lord and fasted that day until evening and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. And the people of Israel inquired of the Lord, for the ark of the covenant of God was there in those days. And Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, son of Aaron, ministered before it in those days, saying, "Shall we go out once more to battle against our brothers, the people of Benjamin, or shall we cease?" And the Lord said, "Go up, for tomorrow I will give them into your hand." So you have two tries here. The Israelites actually get it handed to them. I mean, they get soundly defeated both of those times. Then they make a sacrifice to the Lord and seek out his will one more time. And now they're going to be successful. I personally looked for what to make of, is the Lord endorsing this? Is this just a priest kind of doing the same thing that Micah's priest did? Said, "Oh yeah, sure, go. You guys are going to have great success." And not really consulting the Lord. I don't know. I don't. Any opinions? It's a cleansing. I think maybe God is using that. One person I read said that the reason God sent Judah in first because Judah had a part in this. It said, if you remember, the wife of this Levite went back home to Bethlehem and slept with other men there. Those were people from Judah. And so could this have been a dual punishment? Is God using them to punish themselves? It's just sad to read. Verse 29, so Israel sent men in ambush around Gibeah. And the people of Israel went up against the people of Benjamin on the third day and set themselves in array against Gibeah as at other times. So they're setting up just like they were before. And the people of Benjamin went out against the people and were drawn away from the city. And as at other times, they began to strike and kill some of the people in the highways, one of which goes up to Bethel and the other to Gibeah and into the open country, about 30 men of Israel. And the people of Benjamin said, "They are routed before us, just as the first." But the people of Israel said, "Let us flee and draw them away from the city to the highways." And all the men of Israel rose up out of their place and set themselves in array at Baal Tamar. And the men of Israel who were in ambush rushed out of their place from Marageba. And there came against Gibeah 10,000 chosen men out of all of Israel. And the battle was hard, but the Benjaminites did not know that disaster was close upon them. And the Lord defeated Benjamin before Israel. And the people of Israel destroyed 25,100 men of Benjamin that day. All these were men who drew the sword. So the people of Benjamin saw that they were defeated. So do you see what happened there? Israel lined up as they had before, drew the Benjamites away, and then they sacked the city while they drew them away. Interestingly enough, we now have a retelling of that, possibly from another source that's also included here in Judges. So let's read the story again from a slightly different perspective. The men of Israel gave ground to Benjamin because they trusted the men in ambush whom they had set against Gibeah. Then the men in ambush hurried and rushed against Gibeah. The men in ambush moved out and struck all the city with the edge of the sword. Now the appointed signal between the men of Israel and the men in the main ambush was that when they made a great cloud of smoke rise up out of the city, the men of Israel should turn in battle. Now Benjamin had begun to strike and kill about 30 men of Israel. They said, "Surely they are defeated before us, as in the first battle." But when the signal began to rise out of the city in a column of smoke, the Benjaminites looked behind them, and behold, the whole city went up in smoke to heaven. Then the men of Israel turned, and the men of Benjamin were dismayed, for they saw that disaster was close upon them. Therefore they turned their backs before the men of Israel in the direction of the wilderness, but the battle overtook them. And those who came out of the cities were destroying them in their midst. Surrounding the Benjaminites, they pursued them and trod them down from Nohah, as far as opposite Gibeah on the east. 18,000 men of Benjamin fell, all of them men of valor. And they turned and fled toward the wilderness to the rock of Rimmon. 5,000 men of them were cut down in the highways, and they were pursued hard to get them. And 2,000 men of them were struck down. So all who fell that day of Benjamin were 25,000 men who drew the sword, all of them men of valor. But 600 men turned and fled toward the wilderness to the rock of Rimmon, and remained at the rock of Rimmon 4 months. And the men of Israel turned back against the people of Benjamin and struck them with the edge of the sword, the city, men and beasts, and all that they found. And all the towns they found, they set on fire. Almost there. Awful civil war has broken out. Thousands and thousands of men have lost their lives fighting each other. On into 21. Now the men of Israel had sworn in Mizpah, "No one of us shall give his daughter in marriage to Benjamin." And the people came to Bethel and sat there till evening before God, and they lifted up their voices and wept bitterly. And they said, "O Lord, God of Israel, why has this happened in Israel, that today there should be one tribe lacking in Israel?" And the next day the people rose early and built there an altar and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings. And the people of Israel said, "Which of all the tribes of Israel did not come up in the assembly to the Lord?" For they had taken a great oath concerning him who did not come up to the Lord at Mizpah, saying, "He shall surely be put to death." And the people of Israel had compassion for Benjamin, their brother, and said, "One tribe is cut off from Israel this day. What shall we do for wives for those who are left? Since we have sworn by the Lord that we will not give them any of our daughters for wives." So now they're considering what they have done. Did you guys catch how many were left? How many ran off into the wilderness? 600 men of the tribe of Benjamin are all that's left. And the rest of the tribes are going, "Well, we won, but what have we done? We don't want a whole tribe to be extinguished." But if you noticed in their brutality, they had burnt every city, every woman and child, everything was gone. And they'd already said, "But we've all agreed we're not going to give Benjamin our daughters for wives. So where are they going to get wives? How do we repopulate the tribe of Benjamin with these 600 men if they don't have wives?" So they decide on anybody who didn't provide help. That's what's going to happen here. Verse 8. And they said, And they said, "What one is there of the tribes of Israel that did not come up to the Lord to Mizpah?" And behold, no one had come up to the camp from Jabesh Gilead to the assembly. For when the people were mustered, behold, not one of the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead was there. So the congregation sent 12,000 of their bravest men there and commanded them, "Go and strike the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead with the edge of the sword, also the women and the little ones. This is what you shall do. Every male and every woman that has lain with a male you shall devote to destruction." Keep in mind, this is their people. And they found among the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead 400 young virgins who had not known a man by lying with him. And they brought them to the camp at Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan. Then the whole congregation sent word to the people of Benjamin, who were at the rock of Rimmon, and proclaimed peace to them. And Benjamin returned at that time, and they gave them the women whom they had saved alive of the women of Jabesh Gilead. But they were not enough for them. And the people had compassion on Benjamin, because the Lord had made a breach in the tribes of Israel. So they went among these people who did not participate, basically killed everybody except for the virgins, took the virgins and said, here's some wives for you. But they were still 200 short. So they still got to figure out, what do we do for the other 200 Benjaminites? Verse 16, and the elders of the congregation said, what shall we do for wives for those who are left, since the women are destroyed out of Benjamin? And they said, there must be an inheritance for the survivors of Benjamin, that not a tribe be blotted out from Israel. Yet we cannot give them wives from our daughters, for the people of Israel had sworn, cursed be he who gives a wife to Benjamin. So they said, behold, there's the yearly feast of the Lord at Shiloh, which is north of Bethel, on the east of the highway that goes up from Bethel to Shechem, and south of Lebanah. And they commanded the people of Benjamin, saying, go and lie in ambush in the vineyards and watch. If the daughters of Shiloh come out to dance in the dances, then come out of the vineyards and snatch each man his wife from the daughters of Shiloh, and go to the land of Benjamin. And when their fathers or their brothers come to complain to us, we'll say to them, grant them graciously to us, because we did not take for each man of them his wife in battle, neither did you give them to them, else you would now be guilty. And the people of Benjamin did so, and they took their wives according to their number, from the dancers whom they carried off. Then they went and returned to their inheritance and rebuilt the towns and lived in them. And the people of Israel departed from there at that time, every man to his tribe and family, and they went out from there, every man to his inheritance. So they come up with a great idea for the extra 200. They killed an entire village to get the 400 and said, hey, we still got 200 to go. Why don't we just give them permission to attack all the young ladies at this religious festival? When they come out to do their dances as unto the Lord, let them have their pick. Now, maybe it's because I'm the father of 3 daughters that were probably about that age, but just wow. Again, shock value of how far Israel had fallen. These are the people of God attacking the people of God, using the women of God for their own pleasure. It's just an awful, awful scene. And so Judges ends like this. In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. Let me do a few takeaways. It's a hard one tonight. A lot of do not do this. A couple of so whats. We see in the story of Micah, individual idolatry can easily spread. And so if you have a friend that calls you out on idolatry of something, maybe you're leaning into something too much. Maybe it's food, maybe it's sports, maybe it's politics, maybe it's alcohol, maybe whatever has become where you put your trust. Recognize that we have to call out individual idolatry in each other, because what can happen? Something that Micah made for him and his household ended up in the entire tribe of Dan. An awful scene. We learn from the Levite there that becomes Micah's priest. We see a contrast with Christ. Our priest sought poverty and sacrifice instead of wealth and power. I thought that Levite provided a very nice contrast to Christ as we look forward to our high priest. From that other story, I'd pull this. We have this innate sense that evil should be punished, but we are incapable of punishing it ourselves without falling into more evil. I think that's part of the pattern you see there, that Israel came together and said, we got to take care of this evil in Benjamin. There was evil all over the place. There was evil everywhere. Instead, they've put their laser focus on Benjamin and that awful act. I'm not defending that act. It was awful. What those guys in Gibeah did, just absolutely awful. So they put their focus on that act and said, well, now we got to cleanse our nation of this evil. they would have had to do a lot more. And so our capability of punishing evil is usually us falling into more evil. And so that leaves us at the point of Judges, I think. We desperately need God's king to come. And there was no king. Israel did what was right in their eyes. And so they end up looking forward to that king. And it's not Saul. It's not even David. But ultimately that king will come. Any other so what's from the book of Judges? Yeah. Yep. True. Mm-hmm. Yep. We just try to find somebody that's more evil than us. Yeah.
Plus, they went around it anyway by kidnapping those other women.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
That's the big deal about wiping out the tribe of Benjamin. If they were doing evil, what's the big deal? Kill them all.
They didn't want it. They wanted 12. 12 was a magic number. Got to have 12, guys. Got to have 12. Sad story for sure. And you see what I mean by a downward spiral. Judges started rough and ended in the absolute rock bottom pit of despair, disgusting what the people of God were doing, even to each other. Let's pray. God, thank you for this time we've had in the book of Judges. I do pray that it was meaningful for each of us. There are a lot of similarities from then to now. We see some of these same patterns. I don't think we've descended this far, but God, help us. Help us to call out idolatry. Help us to start with our own hearts, within our own families, within our own church. We've seen that pattern several times. It has to start with us. Instead of judging the outsiders, God, may we just turn to Christ and say, Christ, save us. And we do thank you for that King that you sent us. His name is Jesus, and in his name we pray. Amen. Thank you, guys. We'll start something new next week. We'll see what it is. Between Judges and Lamentations, man, I'm ready for Philippians or something. Yeah.
All right.